How are you doing, Karen?
Good, how are you?
So nice to see you again.
Likewise, as always.
So let me present ourselves one more time. I'm Janet Chavez with Berkshire Hathaway, real estate agent, and we are here today with Karen Murcia with Fidelity National Title in the Woodlands.
Yes.
How are you doing?
Amazing. You know, I can't complain at all. We're staying pretty busy, steady busy.
And that is lovely because obviously the real estate market is going. It doesn't stop.
Yeah.
And no matter what happens out there, real estate always is on the move, always is on the go. So thank you again for your time today. And we're going to dive right into it because we want to make sure that we share what we know with our buyers, other agents, some sellers as well, prospect buyers and sellers that we get a lot of questions and we do work together. I have favorite people to work with, and actually Fidelity National Title is one of them, and I do come to them all the time.
Thank you.
They always they offer a fabulous service, and everybody in here is amazing. Obviously, talking and working with Karen is amazing because she also speaks Spanish, so I work a lot with clients from Mexico, South America as well. And having Karen Murcia help us in the whole process in Spanish is a really big deal. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you as well. It's a pleasure all the time.
Oh, you're
a privilege.
You're so sweet. So let's talk about title in general. So the whole process when we go into a transaction, right? Into whether I represent a buyer or a seller. Title always, buyers and sellers, they really don't know what happens. I call it behind the scenes.
Yes.
But as real estate agents, what we do is we work very closely with our title companies and the lenders if they're involved as well, or any financial party. And this is just what happens. So tell us a little bit of, the process and why title is so important and title insurance is so important to have.
Yes, and so as a title company, we are always the intermediary, right? So we're in the mix of the whole transaction.
Absolutely.
We deal, like you said, with the lenders, buyers, sellers, and both realtors. So we're right in the middle. And our job is to ensure the whole transaction. And so we deal with the whole legal aspect, we deal with the whole recording, the money part, and we issue our insurance. And so as a buyer, you want to make sure that when you're purchasing a property, being, such a big investment, that you're insured through a title company. So here in Texas, we use title companies. We're in the intermediary, the whole transaction. And our job is to run the legal aspect of the whole transaction and to issue a title policy. And our title policy is going to basically tell you, hey, I'm purchasing a property free of any liens, free of anything when it comes to the money situation. And you can rest at ease that we're the ones insuring it. And so at the process, basically you sign a contract, being a buyer or seller. The agent sends us the contract via email, we receive it, we upload it in our system, and we start running our title commitment, which is basically a title report on the property, right? It gives us who the owner is, it gives us any liens, any easements. We run the names of both parties, the buyers and sellers, and with that title commitment, we can get to work. So our job starts basically probably the first 2 or 3 weeks of your transaction.
Yes.
That's if it's not cash. We love cash files.
Yes, we do too.
Yes, those are easy in a way, and they run fast, right? And we then sit on the file a little bit until the bank is ready. And then we receive closing instructions, and we take you to closing, and we fund, and everybody's happy.
Yay! Now it sounds that simple, but there is a lot of paperwork, documentation, research that actually needs to happen for them to be able to have all this ready and, just for us to go to closing and sit down right there at closing. Now, why is it so important for you guys to be in the mix? And I want everybody to understand why title and title insurance is so important. Because again, all the records and everything is actually done by human beings anyway, right? Mm-hmm. So when you're a seller, when you have a property and you sell your property, you are assuming and you are hoping, and sometimes as human beings, we don't know what's behind probably that property, if we inherited the property, if we actually received the property as a gift, or if it was given to us, or even if we don't know how we got there, maybe something behind that from closing date prior. So anything that happens prior to closing date is super important.
Yes.
What happens from closing date onward, it's about to happen. You guys cannot insure what's going to happen from well, actually, you do insure for what happens from there onward, but everything that you find up to the point of closing,
yes,
not always is out there. And the problem comes when after closing, you start finding out all this list of things that actually could happen.
It could happen, right? But our insurance is one of the, maybe the only insurance that will insure the property from the day of closing to the past, right? So
Nice.
Our job is to ensure that when you get to the closing table, nothing is due, there are no liens, you're in fact the owner of the property. And so if something comes up after the closing, like you stated, and the buyer comes up and receives, example, a tax bill, well, then that's when we take over in a way, right? They can issue a claim, we look into it, we kind of see what happens, what needs to be paid or not, and we can proceed from there.
Right.
So it's very important to have title insurance when you're purchasing or selling a property.
Yes.
Because again, we don't know what we're gonna find. You might assume that everything's okay, but we do come and we get those big surprises at times.
Yes.
You know, or stuff happens, divorces, or we have a deceased person in title, or you know, we have liens that you were not aware of, IRS
Absolutely.
liens, child support liens. We just don't know what we could find at times.
And I mean, I know it's probably not common, but sometimes you think, the seller thinks, sorry,
that's okay.
the seller probably thinks that they have all the rights to sell the property. And that's not
Yes.
usually the case,
Yes,
right?
yes. I have a couple on my desk right now, and
There you
know,
go. Tell us a little bit about how that goes and why it's so important to have
Yes.
title involved.
And so, example, I have this lady. You know, her husband passed away, and you know, she came to us and she's like, Karen, I just want to be sure that you know I did my will was probated. My husband did leave a will, and I want to make sure that before we put it on the market, that the property is in fact mine. It should appear as being mine. Well, that is not the case. I ran a little search on the property, and the ex-wife flew in from Argentina and put in a heirship affidavit on the property because
Wow.
obviously did not have a copy of that will, that the true wife basically probated. And now you have the 3 kids from the first marriage and the current wife on title.
Yes. And these stories, as crazy as they might seem, they happen all the time.
All the time, unfortunately.
They happen all the time. And also, just again, to share a little bit about, we don't want to think like this happens, but people tend to sometimes be a little bit deceiving, you know, and you only have whatever the affidavit is filled out with, right? So when there's a seller involved and then you are assuming that they are signing and filling out the affidavit and all the information as accurate as possible, there are times that that accuracy is not there.
Yes, yes.
And there are times where it's a flat out lie, right?
Yes.
What they put on the affidavit. So when it comes to closing, that's what you have, and that's what you have to present, and that's the research, part of the research, because you go by what the seller is giving you as information.
Yes.
And then what happens afterwards when you realize that the seller was deceiving it or lying or hiding something, that's why title insurance becomes a very big deal, because after closing, when the buyer closes on that property, it is really big to make sure that you are insured for all those things that can happen afterwards, after closing.
Yeah, because we just don't know, right? Again, we rely on what they're filling out. We relied on whatever they're telling us. I've had surprises where the seller says all along he is single, right?
Oh, no.
And the wife shows up later on. And so those are the kind of things that we need to make sure, you know, that we just be clear, and we just don't know what we're going to run into a lot of times, right?
Yes. So I bet you have lots of stories to
I
share.
have a lot of stories.
Yes, and as a real estate agent, I have come to a closing once where it was a little bit of it was a surprise to us what we were seeing, we were finding out at closing. We couldn't close, but at closing, we were finding out stuff that nobody was aware, and I can't share much because it was it's a very delicate case, but it was crazy. Just again, at closing, the amount of things that just suddenly start popping up.
Yes.
So it is super important again to make sure that we include a title insurance. I will say almost in every transaction.
Yes.
Is it required in Texas?
It is required, but not a lot of people follow it,
Correct.
right? And I will say this with all the respect, being Latin or Hispanic, a lot of people don't follow it either.
Right.
And so I find all these surprises all the time, or no, I'll close with a notary, or an attorney can do it for me. Okay, but you don't know what you're purchasing, you don't know what you're acquiring, you don't know, if the seller has stuff, like we've been saying, with surprises that you might find later on. And once you purchase and sign in a way with that title insurance, you're kind of stuck with all those liens. You're kind of stuck with all that debt. So that's what we do. That is our job, is to protect all parties in a way. And the seller, once he signs, he wants to sign and be done, right? The responsibility in a way comes now to us.
Absolutely.
And so that's why title insurance is so important. And we try to avoid a lot of these surprises up front, right? As a title company, we try to be very proactive in this. We send a lot of digital information to both buyers and sellers to kind of get all that personal information up front. And here in the Woodlands, we have a lot of foreigners that come in.
Absolutely.
And it's a big, big thing. We deal a lot with FERPA retention.
Yes.
That is, it was not a thing when we came and opened our branch here. And I was shocked that it was not a thing. And so being a buyer, you have all these other stuff that you don't know about.
Correct.
And so that's why we try to be a little bit proactive at the beginning, and we send all this digital stuff at the very front of the transaction when you first sign a contract, to try to avoid as many surprises as we can throughout the whole transaction or at the closing table.
Yes,
right?
and FERPA is been a very big thing actually in the past probably 5 to 10 years.
Yes.
And tell us exactly what it stands for. It's for foreigners, but tell us exactly what FERPA stands for.
So FERPA is, you're gonna put me on the spot.
Well,
I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. But what happens when you are a foreigner and you as a buyer and you decide to purchase a property here in the U.S.
Yes.
And you do not reside here, you're a foreigner, which means that you do not have a citizenship, you are not, right, a U.S. resident.
Yes.
There are taxes involved in all this.
Yes, we all pay taxes here in the U.S.
Correct.
And so it becomes a big thing. So I always say this, as a buyer, we love foreigners to come and invest in our country, right? You can come in all you want and purchase whatever real estate property you want. The
And we
problem
encourage that.
becomes,
We encourage for people to come and invest in the United States.
Yes,
Absolutely.
we definitely want that. Now, you have to see when you're purchasing who you're purchasing from,
Yes.
right? And a lot of, like you were saying, a lot of foreign buyers don't know that, because we try to also keep it separate and clean in a way too. But as a foreign buyer, you kind of have to know who you're buying from. If you're purchasing from a foreign seller, again, meaning that the seller is not a U.S. citizen, a U.S. resident, or a U.S. resident alien when it comes to tax purposes, then that seller is a foreign person. And when you acquire property and FERPA retention is not done, you are acquiring that too. So
Yes.
the IRS might knock on your door and say, hey, you purchased from a foreign, and
Absolutely.
where is my FERPA retention money?
Absolutely. So
And-
guess who pays for that?
Exactly, the
Right.
buyer. And
Right.
that's why it's so important. We have a lot of those cases here in Houston and the Woodlands, especially. A lot of, we're such a diversified city that, you just don't know. And you want to kind of make sure and kind of educate yourself a little bit on that. And FERPA retention, again, has to do whenever we have a foreign seller, okay? And there are a lot of exemptions too.
Yes.
We do deal with a lot of exemptions when it comes to FERPA. As a title company, it's a very iffy subject in a way, because we are never going to be responsible. No title company will ever be liable for FERPA. Now, I will say a lot of my clientele are foreigners, so I try to definitely to guide them and my team to guide them. And we have a team that we can work with when it comes to CPAs, FERPA
And I was going to
stuff.
say, let me say something too. Not every title company deals with FERPA,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So make sure that when you look for a real estate agent, make sure that they do work with title companies,
Yes.
with lenders, with insurance companies, with everybody that actually knows what they're doing. Because just calling a friend is great if they're a real estate agent, but do they really know what they're doing?
Yes.
And again, it is fun to to be a real estate agent, but to make sure that you do things right for your buyer, for your seller, and make sure you guide them in the right direction is a very big deal. And again, title companies, again, like insurance, like lenders and everybody else involved, you have to make sure you do speak and talk and work with the experts. And that's why, again, I love working with Fidelity National Title, because they always have my back and they guide us always in the right direction as well. So for that, I am grateful beyond words for all that.
We are too. Thank you so much.
So FERPA is something that probably needs to come back and talk a lot more about that. It's super interesting. I actually, I'm about to have an interview with a CPA, actually, yes, and FERPA was going to be our subject because it comes up quite a bit. I do work with a lot of investors, with a lot of people that actually purchase property here in the US, and that is a very big deal. And it's not as simple as if you're a foreigner or if you're not. It's not like that, because even a foreigner can open an LLC. And again, we'll go into all this some other time, but thank you. Thank you for your time, for sharing all of this with us.
Thank you for making me a part of this.
No, we love this. And this is for you guys. If you have any questions, you can always email me, text me, we'll pass it on to you guys, or they can call you directly or email you too.
Yes. So my direct line is 281-203-6023. If you cannot reach me there, then our main line is 281-203-6020. And my email is K for Karen, M as in Mary, URCIA at F as in Frank, N as in Nancy, F as in Frank.com. So Murcia at FNF.com.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you,
thank you everybody for joining us again. We'll be having another fun interview in another week. I think next week is Tuesday, so stay tuned. And thank you again, Karen.
Thank you.
It's always a pleasure to come and visit and hang out with you guys.
Yes,
thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, guys.
See you all later.
Bye.
Bye.